This demo is about filtering reports, which you use to restrict what you see after you have displayed a report.
It uses the techniques in the versions of donation prior to release number 4.15 and of accounts prior to release 2.24. There's another video on the newer techniques in newer versions.
Although all of the samples we'll do are for reports, the filtering techniques shown here also apply when you're doing mass mailings with the letters mass mailing menu option or when you're emailing newsletters. So let's take a sample report. Reports, donor, donation info, sort by name. I think that's a good simple example. We'll just accept the defaults. And you can see that we've got various fields here. The name, the total for this year, for last year, and the two donor categories. Suppose we only want to see the people that gave at least $100 this year, which you can see there's just a couple of near the top of the report. So here's what we're going to do. We click Filter. Up comes a rather technical looking dialog box, which actually comes with the program we used to design donation. We didn't design it. We would have made it a little less technical looking, but it works really well. In any case, what it's got down here at the bottom right is the list of columns or fields in the report with the internal names for them. You see, for instance, in the actual report, I'm just moving this down so you can see all the field headings. The column heading is name, but what's here in the columns list in the filter dialog is reversed name, and that's because it actually is that. It's the last name followed by a comma followed by the first name, or the business name when there's a business name. So then we see amount, last year amount, that's quite clear. That obviously means that amount is the this year amount. And we've got the category 1 and 2 fields. So all I need to do is click on amount and then add in greater than or equal to 100. Those symbols are the standard math symbols for greater than or equal to. You notice I don't use dollar signs or commas in a filter. It won't like it. So for instance, if I put a dollar sign here and try to click OK, expression is not valid. That means you typed something it doesn't like. Let's take it back out, click OK, and suddenly there we go. All that's displayed is the two rows for donors where the amount, which is this 2015 column in this case, was at least $100. Now this is helpful. Do you see up here it shows filtered on amount greater than or equal to 100. In most reports where there's room to do so and where there is a header, if you put a filter, it adds that in the heading of the report so that you can see exactly how you've generated the report, that you've put in whatever restriction it is you've put in. So let's look at a couple of other types of filters. Instead of that one, we'll go to Filter, delete it, and type in, say, reverse name less than quote B unquote. Now what that's going to do is it's going to take all the names that start with something before B, namely A. And you notice that because this is text we're comparing to, you have to use quotation marks. I could also equally use single quotation marks instead of double like this, just like an apostrophe. The program doesn't care which you use. So you don't have to verify, but you always can. That says it's okay, but clicking OK confirms that as well. So there we go. We've got all these people starting with A, but we also have this one that starts with a number because in the alphabetical order the computers use for plain text, numbers come before letters, so a number is less than B. Well, what else could we do? Let's look at one of the category values instead. I'm just going to move this away, and you can see that we've got some values in category 1 like attender and member. So, for instance, I could click on category 1 and put equals quote member. It's important to understand that for quoted values, they're case sensitive. So if I were to change that to member with a small m, let's just try that first. Nothing shows up because there's nobody with exactly that value. If I go back and put a capital M instead, click OK, there you go. Everybody that's got member is showing up and nobody else. Suppose I want the members and the attenders but nobody else. There's a couple of ways I could do that. I could do category 1 equals member as it's got here, or, and just save typing, I can click category 1 again, equals attender. So you can use the words like and, or, and not to make more complicated expressions. Let's try that. We've got the members at the top and then it's added in the attenders below that and nobody else. Now we're going to try it in a slightly different way. This is a little trick. We change it to category 1 in, and then we open brackets. It doesn't matter whether you have spaces there or not, comma, attender. And this is a list, so it could have any number of things in it. I could add member, comma, attender, comma, something else if I wanted any of those values to be valid. But this is going to give us the same as what we had before, just the members and the attenders, and members, attenders, there you go. So the word in that filter expression we used means you put in brackets the values that you want to be allowed, and that can replace more complicated expressions with or. So let's eliminate this filter. I'm going to press Ctrl X, which is the standard hotkey for cutting something to the clipboard to memorize it. I'm doing that in case I want to use it again shortly. Otherwise, you could have just pressed Delete or Backspace to clear it. Now the filter's gone. If you delete the filter like that and click OK, the whole report comes back. You'll see we've got some more people with other category 1 values come back. It's not sorted the same way, which was originally by name. And in fact, neither were some of the previous filter examples. The people that were filtered out before, that were excluded, actually get put at the bottom of the report when you undo a filter that was excluding them. That's just kind of a side effect of filtering. If you want to fix that up, use sort. We'll tell it to sort on the reverse name by dragging it over to the list of columns to be sorted on. Click OK, and there you go. It's sorted back the way the report originally was sorted. And it's also showing that up here, sorted by reverse name. That was just a very, very quick demo of sorting. Let's go back to filtering. Suppose I want to find the people that have no category 1 value, because maybe everybody is supposed to be categorized and I want to find the people where I forgot to do that. Well, there's a special function for that. A function is something that you put in a word and then brackets and some value in the brackets, and it does something or says something about it. There's a list of available functions here at the bottom left, though I'm afraid there's no help on them. This help button says a lot of the stuff that's in this demo, but it doesn't explain each function. So what we're going to enter is null, brackets, category 1, close brackets. What that means is the category 1 value is what we call in programming speak null or empty. And when we click OK, you'll see, yes, there's quite a few donors with no category 1 value. You might think I could instead say category 1 equals quote quote and just get rid of that is null part. What happens there? Nobody shows up. Because there's a difference between null, which is completely missing, and empty text. And nobody has empty text as their value for category 1. That's a technical computer difference between those two things. In almost all of the fields in the database, is null that we used before is the right test rather than testing for equals quote quote if you want to see that something's empty. So I'm going to just delete that filter again, this time with just the delete key, to go back to the original list. Now I want to point out something really important about what you can and can't do with filters. What you can do is take these rows of data, so like for instance this one starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's one row, Abby Smith Jones is the second row, and you can restrict it so that you only see some of those existing rows. What you can't do is change the contents of these rows in any way. So for instance, one thing somebody might think they would like to do is to see the totals of the donations, but only the donations to the general fund. Well, the general fund is a donation category, and there's no field for that on this report. We've got donor categories, category 1 and 2, but not donation categories, so you can't do that. All you can do is restrict the fields that you see, or at least that are in the list in the filter dialog here. And that, in fact, is why when you run this report, which we can redo again with the rerun button, you get a choice here to allow you to select a category. I'm going to select general, and then we get some different results. That looks pretty similar because most of the donations I've entered in this sample database are for the general category. Okay, that's covered a lot of options. Now let's look at a couple more filtering options with a different report. This time use reports, donation, all donations, sort by name. There we go. So it looks like there are a couple of donations, these last two here on September 28th. Suppose I want to see only those ones. How do I do that? Of course, I could have done that via the date range prompt for this report, but let's do it with the filter. Let's look at the names of the columns. Pretty obviously, date received is what we're interested in. And what we're going to type is equals 2015-09-28. That's a special format that you must enter dates in for it to work in filters. It must be 4 numbers for the year, a dash, 2 numbers for the month, dash, and 2 numbers for the day. That's the only way they will work, and no quotation marks. Okay, and there you go. We see only those 2 rows. Now let's show you another trick. Suppose I wanted just all the ones in September. There are several ways I could do that, but the easiest one is this. Date received between 01 and 2015-09-30, the last day in the month. Between is another operator or keyword that you can use instead of equals. You always say between this and that. It means you can have any value inclusive between those values. Click OK, and there you've got just the ones in September. Again, I probably want that in sort order now because I'm interested in them by date. So if I click sort, pull over date received, click OK, and you can see that at the moment they're not in sort order. You've got the 28th and the 17th and the 30th. Click OK, and there they're back into order. Let's go to another report that will show some interesting things. Reports, donor, mailing labels. We'll accept the default size, and we'll accept doing it for all donors. Now let's look at the filter dialog. We've got the name, we've got the address fields and the postal code. It's pretty obvious that you could filter on those in some way. But look further down here, and what's this? We've got some more fields, the categories, other info fields, etc., etc. Those fields are not displayed on the report. This is a little programming trick that we do, where some of the reports have extra fields included in them invisibly that you can filter on, but they don't show up on the report. So for instance, remember category 1 is those values like member and attender. You might want to print mailing labels only for members. So again, category 1 equals, quote, member. Click OK, and if you just kind of look at the report, you're going to see as we click OK, a bunch of them disappeared because they were the ones that were not members. Similarly, you could filter on any of these renameable other info fields if you had values in them, or the member number, which is the member or envelope number. It's almost always called member_number in the filter window. Or you can filter on the email address. Maybe you wanted is null of email because you've already sent stuff to those with email addresses by email, and you want to just get mailing labels for the people that don't have email addresses, which incidentally is also an option. If we rerun it, it's also an option here, skip donors with email addresses, so you don't really need a filter on this report to get that effect. So let's say we want to do a mailing to everybody that doesn't have a member number by using the filter to say, hey, would you like to get an envelope number and envelopes for your weekly contributions to our church? So we're going to do the old is null of member number. When I say of member number, that sort of represents the brackets. That's just kind of how programmers speak when they're using functions. And when we click OK, we get all the people that have no member number. You'll notice if I go back to this filter that I didn't capitalize is null the way I had been capitalizing it. With the capital I and the capital N, it's a little easier to read, but the program doesn't care. It'll work with or without caps. And in fact, same with the names of these columns, we could capitalize them. The only thing where it's important is quoted text like the word member, where it's got to be the right capitalization. Now suppose I want to get everybody that does have a member number. The easiest way to do that is just precede this test with the word not. So it's not is null means it is something. Click OK, and I get everybody else. There's 4 people that do have member numbers, just a few in this sample database. Another way to do that, since member number is a numeric field, would be to say member number greater than or equal to 0. Just get rid of that part that's not relevant. Just get rid of that part that we don't need anymore. Click OK, and you see we get the same results with that version. Now that might have been a bit easier to see if I'd used reports, donor, mailing labels with member envelope number, just to show that. because you could see whether they've got a member envelope number or not. Reports, donor, mailing labels with member envelope number. And let's see the ones that just do have an envelope number. So let's do it with the greater than or equal to 0 version. And actually you'll see the spelling is just a little bit different in this version. There's no underbar between member and number. It is a little inconsistent, but what's important is that it's pretty obvious what that field is. And there we go, just those 4 people, and you can see the envelope numbers do show up. On this first label, the donor name is actually so long that the envelope number gets pushed off the line and you can't see it. Not much we can do about that. Let's show you another cool thing that you can do. Suppose I want to get only everybody that's in Quebec. That would be with QC in the address somewhere, assuming that's how I was coding it as opposed to say PQ, which are both versions of the abbreviation for the province of Quebec in Canada. For starters, I'm not sure where it's going to be in the address. It could either be in the address to field or the address 3 field. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to type this out. Adder2 like tick %QC %tick or adder3 like same thing. What am I saying there? Well, the word like allows you to compare fields to quoted text that includes the %sign. And the % means anything, 0 or more characters. So when I say %QC%, I mean QC appearing anywhere in the field. It could be at the very beginning, in the middle, or the end. If you wanted it to be only at the end of adder2, you would say %QC without this second percentage sign, because then I haven't said that it's anything after the QC, only anything before the QC. But I want it anywhere in the field at all, so I'll put it back. And you'll notice that I also used brackets to group these. I tried it before without any brackets, and it comes up and says, expecting true-false expression, which means it's not considered to be valid. So if we click OK, there we go, 2 people with QC in the address. I think in this case they were both in the address line 2, but it certainly would have worked if it was in line 3. Another really important thing, and of course this is true everywhere in the program, is that everything I've told you here is in the help page. So if you go to Filter, click Help, we've got the help page and it's got all kinds of examples. Some are similar to what we've done in this demo and some are different. You can also make this bigger if you're having trouble reading it with Control+ or Control and scrolling the mouse wheel up, just like on a web page, to make it easier to read. It's all there. So we'll close that. Now, I mentioned earlier that when you put things in quotes, they're case sensitive. In other words, it really does matter whether it's member with a capital M or small m. Suppose I'm looking for just people with the last name Adams. But I don't remember whether I spelled their names with all capital letters or capital A and small DAMS. If I do name like %Adams, just to allow Adams to be anywhere, and it would also allow things like Adamson, that's fine. I get 3 people. But I also know that I've got someone named Carol Adams in the database, but it's spelled in all caps. I'm not finding her because of that. So we've got another function we can use here, and it's called upper. Upper converts the field to all uppercase. So if I'm going to compare it something, I've got to compare it to all uppercase. So I've got to change it to Adams in all uppercase there. And there we go. The small letter people are there, and the capital letter Adams person is there as well. That's all I've got to say about filtering reports. Thank you for listening.